Thank you, Karen. I'm here today to talk to you about Proposition 1E. Similar to what Karen said, I'm going to discuss some background material before I get to Proposition 1E because it all depends on two statutes, two existing laws that you voted for or that the federal government has mandated so that Prop E can work. So the first one I want to talk to you about is something called Proposition 63. You voted for that in 2004, and it's also called the Mental Health Services Act. It was approved by the voters to provide funding for certain mental health programs through a 1% income tax, personal income tax, on taxable incomes over $1 million. Prop 63 does not use the general fund, as it is specifically funded through this other tax on the multi-million-dollar folks, and it's dedicated to these mental health programs. So $2.9 billion has been collected by 2008, but delays in getting the program started meant that only $1 billion has actually been approved for distribution, leaving approximately $1.9 billion in reserves for that program. An important restriction on the proposition is that the state is specifically barred from reducing state general fund dollars for mental health services below the 2003 and 2004 levels. So you can't go from Peter to Paul. That program was specific for mental health, Prop 63, and it doesn't use general fund dollars, and general fund dollars were not allowed to drop, so it couldn't supplant the dollars that they got from Prop 63. There's another program I want to mention to you, and it's called, terrible name, but it's called Early and Periodic Screening, Diagnosis, and Treatment Program. That long name is a federally mandated program. It requires the state to provide a broad range of health services, including mental health, to Medi-Cal beneficiaries under the age of 21. The federal government provides about half the funding, and the state must participate in this program. All right, so you have those two existing programs. So what does Prop 1E do? This is also for a 2-year period. It's temporary. Prop E would transfer funds from the Mental Health Services Act, that Proposition 63, to this Early and Periodic Screening, Diagnosis, and Treatment Program to pay for mental health services for children and for young adults. In 2009-2010, $226.7 million would be redirected, and approximately the same amount, or a little more, in 2010-2011. These redirected funds would offset general fund state costs for the federal program. So just to explain that, we must pay into this federal program or we lose the federal dollars. So what this Proposition 1E is going to do is going to take the money from Prop 63, that Mental Health Services Act, and going to pay that half to the federal mandated program. Therefore, the state general fund does not have to pay for it. So it's a savings. That's how it's a savings to the state general fund. Fiscal effect. Prop 1E would result in state general fund savings of about $230 million each year for 2 years. It would result in an equivalent reduction in Prop 63 spending. Additionally, if Prop 63 funds are cut, state and local governments might incur additional costs to backfill those programs. So what does a yes vote mean and what does a no vote mean? A yes vote means that a portion of the funds previously approved by the voters for Prop 63, that Mental Health Services Act, that which supports expansion of community mental health programs, would now be redirected over the next 2 years to achieve state general fund savings. A no vote would mean that all the Prop 63 funds that you voted for would continue to be used to support the expansion of community mental health programs. Other budget reductions or revenue increases would be needed to increase the state's fiscal programs. So the state's going to have to find the money somewhere. We have this federal mandate or we lose the 50% from the federal government. So the one other thing I want to say about that is that the money is very similar. What you voted for in the Mental Health Services Act is very similar money to where it's going to go for the federally mandated program. Supporters say that delays in getting new programs started have resulted in $1.9 billion in unspent tax funds. Prop 1E puts these unspent funds to use by redirecting them to help balance the state budget. The second reason that supporters say to support Prop 1E is that partial temporary cuts to Prop 63 programs now will help the state avoid more severe budget cuts that could require even deeper cuts in programs later. And finally, that Prop 1E ensures that the state will provide the required funds for early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment programs, a use consistent with the approach of Prop 63. Opponents say this is only a stopgap measure that does nothing to address the state's fundamental fiscal crisis. The amount of money this proposition would transfer to the general fund is a small fraction of the state budget, but in many cases it provides the only meaningful source of help for our most vulnerable citizens. Opponents also say that Prop 1E seriously cuts mental health programs mandated by the voters that are helping many people living with mental illness in our community. And finally, that Prop 63 saves the state and local governments money by reducing incarceration, homelessness, hospitalizations, and school failure. During these difficult times, they say, it is short-sighted to cut early intervention, which prevent more serious mental health problems later. So who's in favor of Proposition 1E? Budget Reform Now, California Teachers Association, California Taxpayers Association, California Chamber of Commerce, and the San Francisco Chronicle in their latest editorial. Who's opposed? The National Association for the Mentally Ill of California, the California Council of Community Mental Health Agencies, and the National Association of Social Workers for California. So that is the pros and cons and everything I have to say about Prop 1E.